Just over 10 years since Michael Jackson died in 2009 at the age of 50. A while back, I saw someone make a comment asking me if I would do a video on the documentary Leaving Neverland, this controversial documentary exploring the claims of two young men, James Safechuck and Wade Robson, who alleged that Jackson abused them prolifically. It's directed by Dan Reed. Now, I haven't had the chance to see the documentary, and it appears to be quite hard to access. It isn't on YouTube, and I haven't seen it yet. There are a number of documentaries going around in rebuttal to that, and there's going to be an official one coming out by affiliates of the Jackson estate. So it's almost become like a war of documentaries. Um, I don't usually do requests, but I thought this would be an interesting one because it's just over 10 years now. Like I say, passed away in June 2009. Let's consider some of the things that we know for certain. Michael Jackson was one of the biggest entertainers of all time. I'd have him possibly at number one. I'd put him even above Elvis Presley. I think he had more of an international appeal. I think he was probably slightly more internationally famous. Um, I mean, for example, I think Michael Jackson has been heard of in parts of Asia and Africa that Elvis hasn't been. So that's just an obvious fact. Um, Rather than going into comprehensive detail about the documentary itself, because I haven't watched it, I'm not in a position to do that, and I haven't watched the rebuttal documentaries either. So again, I'm not in a position to comment in detail about those. When I watch them, I might comment a bit about them, although I have to stress even then I won't have seen Finding Neverland. Um, I think with anything like this, you have to come in with an open-minded perspective. You cannot be emotionally navigated by something like this because there are people who are diehard Jackson fans will simply take the view it's all one big smear campaign. It's like they are emotionally biased because they're hardcore fans. And this is an aspect of celebrity that I think cannot be ignored. Susanna Reid in the interview, and I'm going to put a link to both the interview with Dan Reid, this is on this morning, and the interview with Jermaine Jackson defending his brother. Susanna Reid said that can one man be so powerful that he would pull over the wool over everyone's eyes, the FBI, the police, judges, everyone. I think when it comes to fans, I think they're biased. If you are a hardcore Jackson fan, whether you like it or not, whether you admit it or not, you're biased. Okay? Because you're never, ever, ever going to accept that your idol might be anything else other than your idol, right? But for those people who recognize Jackson as a great musician, and I do. I mean, I've got a few of his albums. Um, I've got Thriller. I've got Dangerous. I've got Bad. Um, for those of us who respect his music, I think we want to not be emotionally, we want to distinguish the music from like Michael Jackson, the public figure, versus what if. Now, I thought Piers Morgan approached this pretty well. I've been critical of Piers Morgan at times, and he's a controversial figure himself. As an interviewer, he's often rude, he often talks over people, he's often pretty pompous. But he was pretty balanced with this in terms of how he interviewed Dan Reid and in terms of how he interviewed, and I should say Susanna Reid as well, um, Jermaine Jackson. Jermaine Jackson's obviously biased. He's always been a defender of his brother. He was on the verge of, I think, breaking down towards the end of the interview. He said, "Can we just leave this man alone? My family's been through enough," which is it's understandable. But to be honest, I mean, he would say that, wouldn't he? He's his brother. So I don't really think you could take someone's brother and say, "Oh well, he says this, so that must be the truth." What Piers Morgan put to Dan Reed was, "We're now in an era in this Me Too, the fallout from Me Too, whereby my version of the truth is the only truth," and that is what has been happening with Me Too, i.e., powerful man gets accused of sexual misconduct, and everyone believes it must be true. The woman must be telling the truth. She must be, or in some cases, men. But I do find it interesting the difference in responses with the number of people lining up to defend Jackson versus the lack of people lining up to defend Harvey Weinstein. Strange thing that among Michael Jackson's defenders have been Corey Feldman and Macaulay Culkin. Now, Corey Feldman has not been shy of being candid in terms of sexual abuse in Hollywood. I'm not sure if he made claims against Harvey Weinstein, but he, he hasn't sort of went with the crowd. No one can accuse Corey Feldman of going with the crowd. One thing I am cautious about though is I remember the fallout from the Jimmy Savile thing. For years, Savile was protected by the establishment. That's just a fact. And he was a very popular figure in the UK. Now, I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing. I'm not saying that Jimmy Savile and Michael Jackson have the same character. I really don't think that's the case. I think Jackson had a child like mentality because he had no childhood. That wasn't true of Jimmy Savile, who was a former minor and who became a celebrity as an adult. Um, so I think as men, they're very different. But all I'm saying is celebrity can go two ways. It can either be an Achilles heel insofar as your name is out there. So if you're accused of something, as the Cliff Richard experience shows, that can be incredibly detrimental. Um, but it can also go the other way, whereby your fans put up this kind of bubble around you to justice. Um, One thing that is true is that both these accusers swore on oath. They went into a court of law in Los Angeles, swore on oath that they believed Michael Jackson to be innocent. At that time, it wasn't claims that they were making, but against other claimants. And, that's pretty serious. If the implication now is they're making claims, well, they lied on oath then. So Dan Reed would need to accept that, and he would need to explain, well, why did they do that? I think looking at this interview on This Morning, his rationale was, well, there's this dynamic with pedophiles that children who are being abused by them can be heavily manipulated, even feel that they are in love. And as he put it, Wade Robson felt that he was in love with Michael Jackson. So it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome type argument, I guess. But the facts are that he was acquitted in a court of law in 2005 in that very highly publicized trial. He was acquitted. And I don't think America is a country where allegations about child sexual abuse is taken lightly. I have a friend who's a teacher and she actually has to go to her local police station and get a photo shoot and everything. They're very meticulous about child safety in the States, as they arguably should be. More so than the UK, more so than many countries. Although the UK is still a lot more meticulous than other parts of the world, just add that caveat. Um, but there are a few things that I cannot really find acceptable. And Piers Morgan also made this point. Michael Jackson slept with young boys. Now, his defenders say well, that doesn't mean it was sexualized. Michael Jackson himself said, oh, but that doesn't mean it's sexual. Whatever way you gloss it over, at best, it is not appropriate for an adult man to sleep with young boys. And Jermaine Jackson made this excuse, oh, there were slumber parties. Well, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. what was also put to Dan Reed was one of the defending arguments for Michael Jackson is that if he were a serial paedophile, would he not target every young boy in his vicinity? And that wasn't the case. There are a lot of now men who've come out and defended Jackson, particularly against this documentary. Um, so would it not be the case that if Jackson really was a serial paedophile, and this is the track record of paedophiles, they target everyone who's available to them in their sight? Piers Morgan also made the argument that these guys are looking for a big payday, or at least that would be the perception. Part of the problem is America, it has a suing culture, which I think is not a good thing. It's like everything is about money. And so these guys may be telling the truth, but people are going to read into it and say, oh, well, they're only doing it for the money. But Dan Reed made a valid point. Well, the Jackson estate also has vested interests regarding money. And that's part of the problem with America. Everything is about money. So ultimately, I just don't know. I do think that at best Jackson was naive to think it was okay to sleep with young teenage boys. I mean, even if nothing was happening, he was naive to think that there wouldn't be repercussions from that. Very naive. Critics would say actually he was a manipulative predator. I think, in terms of the balance of opinion, I still think there is a lot of people out there. You just have to look at Michael Jackson videos. He still has enormous support in a way that Jimmy Savile doesn't. I mean, try find Jimmy Savile supporters nowadays; they're almost non-existent. Um, and again, I'm not saying it's the same thing. Michael Jackson was famous worldwide, whereas Jimmy Savile was only famous in this country. But for me, you have to look at these things objectively. You cannot look at it either as, well, they're making these claims, so they must be telling the truth. They died under oath. I mean, that's the insinuation that Dan Reed would be making. If they said that at the time, they died under oath. I don't know if there's any criminal consequences for that. I would have thought it's a pretty serious matter to lie under oath in criminal proceedings. Surely that's contempt of court or something like that. I don't know. I don't know American justice. I don't know California law, but I would have thought that was some sort of contempt of court. Um, on the other hand, you could look at this as a David and Goliath situation because the sheer star power that Jackson had and has. I mean, people are saying that, oh, well, there's a huge backlash against this. Radio stations aren't playing his music and so on. But he still has enormous support, I think. You just have to look at his videos here on YouTube. So I really don't know. I think people need to be very careful about the cult of celebrity. And that's not to say that Michael Jackson is guilty, but I certainly don't think that hardcore Michael Jackson fans are capable of being objective. I just don't think, even if they think they are, he's their icon. What does bug me a little bit about people who worship celebrities in that way is they think they know everything about the person. And you see this with other characters. They think they know everything about the person. Michael Jackson was one of the most famous people in the world, and he had the sort of media attention that Princess Diana had. They were absolutely relentlessly under the microscope. Susanna Reid did make a good point regarding that, though. Surely, with that level of scrutiny, could he have got away with it for so long? The difference, again, to bring in the Jimmy Savile thing was the 70s was a different time. The level of scrutiny wasn't the same. Whereas Michael Jackson was still, I think it's different in that sense. So I'll just conclude with this point. I really don't know. I haven't seen the documentary. I haven't seen the subsequent rebuttal documentaries. If there is an argument to be made, and I'll just make this point. If Dan Reed was looking for fame or looking for money or something like that, he's taking a pretty hard way to do it because he's going to get vilified by Jackson supporters. They're going to say he's a complete charlatan, he's a liar, he's this, that, and the other. And the two men making accusations, I suspect they're going to get targeted as well, and that's wrong. But Dan Reed also seems to have a certainty that, and he says there's lots of evidence. Well, I haven't seen a documentary. Maybe there is, or maybe there isn't. But ultimately, it's a documentary. One of the main accusations against it, as I understand it, is that it's very biased. He says he's included Michael Jackson's rebuttals. I just don't know. And a final point, let's say Michael Jackson was a paedophile, right? Let's just put it out there. And that's not my position. I'm not saying he is. Does that mean that his music should be banned? So if someone has a dark side, does that mean their art is no longer should no longer be celebrated? If a sportsman or sportswoman has a dark side, should their achievements in the sport be ignored? I'm kind of the view of let's recognize people's achievements, but if it is proven that they had a darker side, then the fans shouldn't be blinded to that. I mean, the fans cannot say they know everything. They just can't. So my gut feeling is Michael Jackson was tried in a court of law. He was found not guilty. My gut feeling is he was not a paedophile, but he skirted a pretty close line sometimes. That's my gut feeling. I do not believe Michael Jackson was necessarily a dangerous predator, but I do think some Jackson fans are way too blinded by the cult of celebrity. And but they've been actually pretty aggressive in terms of the backlash against accusations. So I just don't know. What's your thoughts? What is your gut feeling? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you're interested, and feel free to share this video. I'll put links to those This Morning interviews. One with Dan Reed, the director of um, Leaving Neverland, and the other with Jermaine Jackson. If anyone has actually seen the documentary, let me know your thoughts on that. Thanks for watching.